I was reading through the bioc, and there are bits and pieces about you, but it doesn't state. Whoever writes those biocs is rather useless.
You get the thing on yellow paper?
No.
Oh no, that's really bad.
Well, the white one is not very informative. You know, for example, how long you've been together. You know, how did you get together, and so on. You know, it gives the naturally that you were on the indie scene, you had a label or whatever, and then moving on. Can I have a bit of a background? How did you meet, and why did you meet?
Why did we meet? Julianne was in London, and I was living up north. She wanted to work with a guitar player, so I came down to audition like a passel of other people, and I got it.
He got the job, although the job didn't look like a very good job at the time, because the music was awful, and there's no false modesty there. It was really bad and unformed.
But there was something about it that you could see, that it could work out. There was still that little bit of a spark there that you thought, yeah, there's something about this. When it was early days, so I took the plunge and moved down.
And this is about 3 years
Yeah,
ago.
this is quite going back a bit. Then we got Andrew in, who is a friend of mine from up north, who I used to be in a group with.
That's the base.
And finally, after working for years with a drum machine, we got Mark, the drummer.
About 6 months ago, we were recording the album, and we didn't have a drummer at the time, so we were using a friend with Mick, the drums for the mission. He did as much as he could, but then their schedule got hectic. So we got the session man in, who happened to be Mark. And we liked him and he liked us. He was fed up of doing sessions and wanted to be part of the band. So 6 months ago he became part of us.
So it wasn't the money. I mean, money wasn't the
No,
incentive to join you.
he was probably earning more.
I bet he
doing
was.
sessions.
Yeah.
And he'd been through it all before. He was the drummer for Nick Kershaw's band for years. So he'd had success and he'd had money. And what he wanted was to be part of the writing team and part of a real band instead of a backing
Yeah, but she
musician.
couldn't be at Nick Kershaw and playing such music. What does the matter
I'm
with
not
you?
a fan, yeah.
No, unless the money was good, as you said. Well, so you're from London or you're from?
I'm from the Midlands, Coventry. The others are all from the north of England. But we've all been living in London for about 5 or 6 years.
No, I was a bit puzzled because on the 12-inch single it says information service or whatever, West Yorkshire or whatever,
Yeah.
So I thought, immediately the connection, I'll put you there, in Yorkshire, like
The connection is that our manager manages us and the mission. And he managed them first, so they established lots of things in the north of England, including the fan club, which seemed like a good idea to share the base, share the people who run it, because it's very well run. So that's why it is up there. But we are often confused. People think that we're a Leeds band because we've been associated with them and because, 3/4 of the band are from the north. I mean, on the press release it says, a cheery bunch of northerners living in London, which is slightly patronising.
Yeah, well, I suppose Midlands is north from London, isn't it?
Just about. Anything north of Watford is the north.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I suppose I am a north.
No, I don't know much about Leeds. I mean, I've spoken to the mission and I've spoken to Andrew Eldridge and so on. And the thing is that the only thing I know about Leeds is they've got lost. The one-way system is disgusting. So I don't want to go there. And everybody says it's rather quiet and boring place. It's sort of a family place. Nothing's happening.
I don't know. When I used to go there for the weekend, because I used to live just outside of there, it was almost like going to mini London. It's a bit of an exciting place to be.
Well, I suppose it all depends where you come from.
Yeah,
what you are used to. So.
I think because of the number of bands that have come from Leeds, a kind of myth has been built up about it, that it is this fun, happening, musical metropolis, like maybe Liverpool was when the Beatles and all the Mersey stuff was happening. I think that same thing is thought about Leeds. I mean, a lot of bands have come from there, but I don't think there seems to be a scene. No.
Anyway, back to you. In your indie days, were you feeling frustrated at any point? I mean, in a sense that you make music and you sell records, but there is only a certain amount of people that it's actually a ghetto, a music industry ghetto, and it's very difficult to, for example, when you are on indie label, it's very difficult to meet foreign press. The Rough Trade used to do a great business 10 years ago when they, were coordinating all the labels. Now you could talk to anybody, but now there are so many different labels. It's very difficult, to get exposure outside of Britain.
Well, it was frustrating on that point, and frustrating on millions of other points as well. We never revelled in being an indie band. We always felt frustrated by the limitations that were put on you financially and the number of people that you met. A lot of bands are happy to be an indie band because there is a kind of inverted snobbery about it. It's hip and it's cool and you're ethically right on. But we have still managed to keep our ethics. We didn't have any big chips on our shoulders. We weren't giving any political message. We weren't standing up for them. We were just creating music. And the major machinery would bring that to people faster, quicker, to more people.
Sure, yeah.
And we were always frustrated. We were, in the beginning, we were humble. We thought, thank God, somebody is giving us the money to put a single out. And they're giving us money to put another single out. But we don't want to give them an album, this kind of thing. And they wanted an album. So we hung out, we waited for this deal for an awfully long time, it seems. But you cut corners, everything is done, unless it's one of the big indies, like Rough Trade or Mute, which seem to be like small majors.
They are small majors. They are into money, there's no idealism anymore. Did you try to approach majors before you got an indie deal?
Oh yeah, we were always sending off demo tapes, very naively, very
falling
bad
under deaf
quality.
ears, huh?
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
Yeah, some wouldn't even bother to send them back, or be sent back with a photocopied rejection slip. We never actually got to meet anyone or talk to anyone on the telephone. It was a permanently closed door until, we did that big tour with the Mission and found a manager who knew how to get into closed doors.
It's all a bit rubbishy really, because the only people that did happen the way it's meant to do, whereas you send a tape out and they say, yeah, we like this, we want to meet you, is RCA, the publishers, who were initially interested, and everything followed in suit after that. But I'm sure if it hadn't have been for Tony or RCA, we'd still be floundering around sending tapes, because it got to the sort of like the stage where it was like, oh yeah, looks like they're going to be okay, and everybody was suddenly alerted to us, and then they were falling over themselves to come and see us, just because of this association with Tony and RCA. But before that, it was nothing.
RCA really stuck their necks out, when everyone else was like ignoring us and thinking, oh, their name's been around on the indie circuit for a while, let's kind of, have to pass on that. So, yeah, it was the publishers that alerted the record companies to us. That's the way around it happened.
Which is lazy, It's so lazy, it shouldn't have happened that way. Because the material was the same stuff we were offering 6 months ago.
Sure.
It's just stupid.
But if you're not highly profound, well-packaged band nowadays, to be exploited for a season or two.
Yeah.
I mean, the record companies, well, what gets me, and I've been around and I listen to a lot of music for a long, long time, is that record companies have no patience to invest in bands, to develop. I'm saying the Beatles would have a problem to sign a deal nowadays, and I'm bloody sure they would.
Yes, they want it ready. Yeah. Ready just to be put in the sleeve.
Just look at Bros on CBS now.
Yes.
All nicely packaged, there to be exploited for this year. 1988, exploitation, 1989, said Bros.
Oh yeah.
Just look at Aha, whatever, I mean, I think it started happening in about 1982 with Kajagoogoo, the first band of that ilk.
Yeah. Yes.
And since then, the real bands, like the Mission of, they have a hard time to get the product out.
Yes. Well, we know the struggle of actually getting the deal. Since we've had the deal, I think that Phonogram have been quite sympathetic to us. They're not pushing us to have a hit single next week,
You have one.
But we have. But it happened by accident, They still, I believe they still would be supportive if it hadn't have happened, because they see us, like the old-fashioned bands, as being a more long-term proposition. They've even said it wouldn't be the end of the world if we were an album band, but now and again had a single, which, in the wake of the culture clubs and, say, Bros, they're not album bands. They're as good as their last single. But, we're...
One miss and forget it.
But that's not the case with us, and the company seem to have that view. Thank God.
Well, I'm glad that Radio 1 is spinning you.
Yeah.
You know.
They were good for the last single as well.
And whenever your single comes on air, it's like a fresh breath of air, you know. It's different, you know. It sounds, it's not all this manufacture, you know, house groove or whatever, you know, crush. I mean, they're on the same level. But come on.
Yeah.
It's really sickening listening.
Very few songs stand out. At the moment, I think, well, obviously I think ours does. And the odd one, like, you know, the Sinead O'Connor thing. Comes up, that comes on the radio, and immediately it stands out from the same beat that's been going for the past half hour. Yeah. Perhaps they're being educated in the radio. Maybe I'm being too hopeful by the way you're
all of them should be, you know, the programmers should be trashed, you know, until they come to their senses. Really. It was disgusting. You know, it's another ghetto, you know, top 40 ghetto. No disrespect to, you know, the mentality of top 40, you know, which they have at Radio 1.
We have got in there against all odds. I understand that. Yeah.
But, I mean, I should congratulate you on the album. I really love it.
You heard the album?
Well, I played it like mad, you know.
Oh, good. Good. I didn't know they were letting people hear it.
Oh, yeah, you get a listening cassette, you know.
Oh, right.
I mean, I've just seen the artwork, so I know, you know, bits and pieces, but I was just given the cassette, you know, with the titles, and you don't know anything, and just put it in, and it hits you, and I said, wow, something, you know, I can listen to, you know, something to get excited about. And I think that Martha's Harbour is my, you know, just a fame, you know. I mean, I'm glad you have a success with this single, but I think that Gypsy, whatever it's called,
Gypsy Dance,
would have been even more successful.
Well, it's
strange, but it grips you immediately.
Yeah.
You know, it's stranger than the current one, but somehow it gets you as well.
That's funny, because at the moment we're wondering what the next one should be, the next single. And Gypsy
Don't take my advice, you'll blind me up.
No, it was one that kind of came up at the meeting, and then it was put on, and then, no, it's too slow. No, I don't know, it's a real heartache trying to think of the next single, because now so much seemingly depends on it.
Shelter from the Rain? That's very epic, maybe.
Oh, it is.
Well, why don't you put the whole, you know, why don't you put the whole album out? I mean, you know, it's single. It's a brilliant album. I mean, I'm not trying to be, you know, flattering for, you know, just, I really love it.
Well, we do too. When people ask us what we listen to, we have to admit that it's our album. I'm not bored of it, and I'm not bored of any one track yet. I'm listening to our own album like a fan. You know, I'm that detached from it now. It's hard sometimes to hear your own work objectively, but, you know, I'm so in love with it, and we're in awe of it, in a way. Some of the stuff that's on it seems like bigger than all four of us. You know, like, gosh. Especially something like Martha's Harbour. Now, I'm glad that we've got this top 40 hit, but it's with a song that is good, but Martha's Harbour is good, and it is what we're all about, really, in a way.
But, I mean, the song is lovely. I'm doubtful what single will be.
Oh no, not as a single, but...
It's a real album track.
Yeah.
So, all of you write the material?
Yeah.
How do you do it? Collectively, or is it a riff or whatever, somebody comes in?
Things have happened that way, haven't they?
Some of it is like just riffy stuff that's it's taken as far as it can be, just playing around with it within the band. Then we'll all okay it, or we'll say not today, and then not use it, start it again. More often than not, we take the bare bones of something, and Julianne will take that away and do a thing over that, and then after that's done, develop it even more. We never actually all get in a rehearsal room and jam things out, vocals, guitar, drums and bass.
Musically you do though.
Musically, yeah, but I mean, you never know if it's a really good song until you've heard what you've done with it, because it determines if it's going to be a great song or a good song. It's never crap, but it's always good or great. So you don't know until that vocal's gone on. So that's the way we do it. Other bands must do it different ways, but it works for us.
Everybody's got different, you know, clubs. So you're the final maestro, are you?
Well, yeah.
You put it into a final shape, let's put it that way.
Well, as Tim said, it defines how the song's going to go in the end. Once my bit's been done, it's then decided what nice guitar embellishments would be nice with that, and maybe whether a keyboard is required or not. But I like the way we write, because nobody is the leader and nobody is the master, and you're only as good as each other. You know, if one of us left, we wouldn't be the band that we are. You know, everybody is as important as each other. And it sounds horribly nice, you know, but it is true. You know, we're obsessed with trying to be very democratic, and something of everybody in the songs. There's a couple of songs that have been just guitar and vocal, but that's only because it would sound stupid if it was drums and vocal.
What about the lyrics? Do you take care of it?
Yeah, they let me do that. Because you know, you can be more passionate about...
From time to time off?
No, they're not wordsmiths. They're great musicians, but they're not wordsmiths. They, you know, I will show them my lyrics, and if there was something to object to, I would listen. You know, but usually they say that's your domain, and as long as you don't do anything too embarrassing, do what you want. Good way to work, because you can be more passionate about it than you believe in, and if Tim had written feelings and asked me to sing about it, because obviously we have...
Were you doing any covers? No, I'm asking because of the lyrics. How do you approach if you have to interpret somebody else's lyrics?
How do I approach my lyrics?
No, somebody else.
Somebody
else.
else?
You were doing covers in the past. I don't know if you...
Oh, how many? Well, we've done... We did a folk song called She Moves from the Fair. It's an old Irish song. And it is actually sung from the man's point of view about his dead love. So that doesn't apply at all. With folk music, you just sing it as it's written, you don't adapt it. The only other thing we've done is...
You're telling a story, actually.
Yeah, that's it. You're just a narrator. The only other thing we've done is a big mistake. It was Cliff Richard's Devil Woman indie singles, our last indie singles. And it was really done for fun.
No, it's just soulless pile of crap. It was awful.
Just for fun, but it's not even fun anymore, you know. And that was awful. That was adapted. You know, look out for this kind of woman was the view. It was awful. I don't think we do other people's songs well. We've tried a few. You know, we seem to have sufficient of our own without having to do that. And like we said to the lady who was in here before, if we do cover somebody else's song, it does sound soulless and like a pub band, you know. We can't put... It's hard to put a style as defined as ours into somebody else's music. So it's not something we'll explore, unless it is traditional music, maybe. A little bit more of that, because the folk song worked really well.
It's hard to, as you say, actually, thinking about to put yourself in somebody else's shoes when you're covering a song.
Trying to imagine what the feelings were when
yeah,
it's writing.
Because you're always thinking of how the original went, and you're trying to get it as good as or as near that as you can, and it's not really what, if you left to your own devices, you...
The thing about it as well is there's always a person, if it's somebody big, like if we covered I can't think of anyone now, somebody that, you know, a Madonna song, which we wouldn't, it would always be a Madonna song, you know, because that person is just massive.
Unless it's something obscure.
Yeah. But with that folk song, it belongs to everybody, you know, that's what folk music is. It wasn't done by Cliff Richard or Madonna. So you can sing that and believe it, you know, even if you're putting yourself into the opposite sex or anything. It's just so emotional that it's such a sad song. You're left kind of like this, isn't it?
Although all of you make music, the focus is going to be on you for two simple reasons: songstress and a woman. How are you geared to cope with the media attention, the punters' attention, all the longing looks?
I'd say I think it's easier to cope with because I'm part of a band. So it puts it into perspective. If I was a solo female singer, I think I'd feel ever so neurotic about it, because it's you and you're responsible for everything and you are looked up to. But being part of a band, if I am kind of like treated as a goddess by somebody who's written me a letter, without laughing at them, I can say, oh gosh, look at this, and they'll go, oh dear God, if only they knew what you were really like. You know, and bring me back, well, not bring me back down to earth, because I don't get off on it, but it keeps your feet right on the ground to be part of a group. I think a problem would occur if I was a solo person. I think that's when perhaps you've only got yourself to think about, and then you get too
Nobody
wrapped
else
up in
will hide
yourself.
behind her.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is she really like?
She really like
Full woman? A devil woman?
a devil woman. She can be a devil woman, yeah, sometimes.
Bossy?
No more than usual, I should say. No more
Can't
than
tell the truth.
most
no.
women. Women are different things to men, and all the things I see in other
Don't
women.
tell me that. But you-
Different night.
No, different. No, that's the thing I know.
Sure.
Well, just in case you didn't, everything I see in a woman, I can see in Julianne times 10. I think that's the best way to
Kind of like
describe it.
Cleopatra.
She's
Larger than life woman, huh?
yeah, but not as you see her like on stage. I'm talking about personal life now. Just more of a sort of a caricature of what you can imagine a normal woman being like.
But there is one thing that will protect you in all that attention. That men, and I'm talking as well as of the punters and the media people, are afraid of successful women. They have a certain respect and offense, you know. They wouldn't approach you. I mean, you never get male groupies.
No,
No,
never.
You
They
see?
get- they
Because
get-
successful woman is something, you know, a man cannot cope with.
Yes, we've noticed this. I mean, we're not the kind of band that gets inundated with groupies, but after a show,
Sure, but
girls
you know,
will
being
come
in a
up, they'll
band,
talk
of course.
to them,
Yeah,
and they'll
yeah.
want their autograph,
And you'll be alone in a corner.
I've had very, very young boys. They don't seem scared. Maybe 16-year-olds. They come up and they want a little kiss on their cheek and an autograph. But the older ones, you know, it's like, go and talk to them. Yeah, I've noticed that. Don't mind it. Like 16-year-old boys.
That's against the law, isn't it? I don't know about the boys.
No, I don't think it is. She wouldn't anyway.
No. I wasn't implying anything. It was a loud wondering, you know. Tell me about the producer. Why him? I find it rather not a strange choice, but surprising.
It was a strange choice, and the people we met before it were a factor in us choosing him, because they walked in and they had producer written all over them, and music business person written all over them. He was not of that type. He hadn't become Americanized like a lot of the producers had. He had a very great Englishness about him, and he saw the Englishness in our music and brought that out of it. You know, obviously he's had a very long and varied career, starting off in the Yardbirds and going into production quite early on in his life, because he left the Yardbirds after a couple of years. He'd worked with people like Cat Stevens, which appealed to us because he had he wasn't aware of any scene that was going on. He wasn't aware of any movement. He didn't know what Gothic was or Nouveau Hippie or whatever. He just saw us as a band who wrote songs, and he was interested in our music rather than any kind of hype built up around us. And we just met him and liked what he talked about. I hadn't even heard anything he produced. I knew what he produced, but I hadn't heard it. He just, his manner was good, his enthusiasm, and he must have been in his 40s, but his enthusiasm of, you know, a young teenager tired us out, you know. Very worthwhile working with him. We'd like to do it again. His forte was the ballads. He's very big on the slower stuff. A bit lost in the more heavy guitar-based tracks, but he still rose to the occasion with them. But I think it was great to use him rather than one of the, you know, there's always about 5 producers that you bands choose.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And we didn't even consider them, just to be contrarian, I think, you know. It's because we didn't want to use somebody just because they produce new bands.
I love what I hear, by all means. Tell me, listening to the album, it's very difficult to... Obviously, what would you admit being your influences? Or in other words, when you were growing up and, you know, posing with a racket in front of a mirror, who did you want to be or be alike?
I wanted to be in a band. I can remember feeling that, definitely.
Was there any band in particular that you can name as, you know...
No, I'm a
which was, either like them or...
No, it's the whole idea of actually not one particular person, like a lot of people say, oh, Elvis, so Elvis with his guitar, I wanted to be like Elvis, but it was the idea of being in a band and all the things that would happen to you with being in a band that seemed nice and doing this thing for yourself, and it was you doing it and nobody else could interfere. The thing that influenced me looking back on it now was the radio was always on, because my mum and dad had me when I was quite young, so there was still, groove or whatever. So they had the radio on playing all this stuff which was filtering through my head. And I think we've come back to a bit of that now, rather than music I got involved in when I was in my teens, which all seems a bit plastic and crappy now. There was something about that, what was happening to me when I was very small, which has not guided me to what we do now, but it's the technicality that was involved in it. Because when I was 17, 18, it was just, punk rock, new wave.
I think when we were children listening to the radio in the background, I think pop music was much more quality pop music than today. I mean, there were people on the radio like Dusty Springfield and Donovan and Sandy Shaw that were pop stars, but the songs, were memorable. They were great songs. So we were very aware of songs, I think, from an early age. And there was nobody I wanted to be like, because the kind of bands I admired were usually male bands, the big pompous ones like Pink Floyd and Genesis and Led Zeppelin.
Yes.
And Yes.
Sure.
All of those stadium over-the-top bands I loved.
They weren't stadium then, they were playing Hammersmith Odeon, believe me.
And I remember seeing them in Hammersmith Odeon,
My mum wouldn't let me go. I wanted to see Rainbow when I was 14 or something, she wouldn't let me. But that was the kind of band.
Not the band or the theatre?
The band.
No, because the theatre was excellent.
Yeah, I heard about that. It's supposed to be beautiful. It's a shame it's closed. So I couldn't have wanted to be them, but their music I found like really, really exciting and moving. Because punk passed me by. I didn't really get into that at all. So through my teens I was your typical progressive rock fan. But I had some pop sensibility because of what I'd listened to when I was younger than my teens. And I think that's what we've got a mixture of now. Of a sense of the epic, but also with a sense of what people want to hear on the radio too. So
not like a
background.
20-minute song.
No.
Like Yes, for example. So when you're relaxing, apart from listening to your own album, I mean, do you go back to those albums from your youthhood, or do you tend to listen to something new happening, or?
Not really
the older
interested
stuff,
in
really.
Probably the most recent band I've got into would be something like, in the last few weeks I've discovered R.E.M. We've been around for ages.
Brilliant.
But I think that's the only 80s band that I could actually stick my neck out and say, yeah, they have something of the earlier band's quality in them. But I'm not totally retrogressive. I do listen out for what's happening now, but nothing has really impressed me enough to rush out and buy it.
There is one album here on London label, Mercy Seat, from on the Slush label. Sounds rather interesting. I picked it up the other day, and just put it on without knowing anything, Really surprising.
Yeah.
What's the name of it again?
Mercy Seat.
I've never heard of it. Is that the album?
Neither. Yeah, it is the album. Fronted by a black girl,
Yeah.
And she can sing gospel or whatever, punk, all at once. It's really got a power.
Yeah.
So, should give it a spin, especially if you get,
Yeah.
have it without any expenditure. So, when you signed the deal, and obviously you had the advance, were you tempted to waste it, or you invested it wisely?
No, we all started to pay ourselves a fairly decent wage, just for a slightly better standard of living, because it couldn't be any worse than it was. No, we knew that, especially with your first adventure, it has to all go back into the band, really. Our first thought wasn't to go out and buy property or cars. We've had to spend this first year putting everything back into it. Maybe this year we might be able to start looking at tiny flats with a massive mortgage. But we haven't suddenly become moneyed. I don't believe that our lifestyle has particularly changed. Just we don't struggle so much.
Yeah,
It's nice to not have to think about when you can afford to buy food or a new pair of shoes.